2025 was the year I finally cleared out my entire gaming backlog, but there were some major hurdles I had to jump through to get it done. I only completed 10 games this year, but between massive performance bugs and a community that literally paid to delete my save files mid-run, every single completion felt earned. From the games I love to the games I wish I never touched, these are my 100% completed games for 2025. I've seen many iterations of the Journey to the West story, but I haven't gotten around to actually reading it yet. I wasn't aware that Black Myth Wukong was actually a sequel. I thought it was just another retelling of the story. By the end of the first night with the game, I was actually hating it, mainly due to frame rate issues and frequent screen tearing during cinematics. I was playing on a PS5 in performance mode as well, so I was surprised this wasn't as vocal a problem since release. Coincidentally, a patch was released the day before I started playing it, so the next day I installed it and replayed what I did that night. The quality difference was apparent almost immediately. Surprisingly, this update came out just over a year after release. Were people really dealing with these problems for over a year? Or did everyone just get the PC version? There were still instances of frame rate issues throughout the game, and eventually even a full-on crash, but definitely not as rampant as the first night with the game. In regards to the game though, it had its ups and downs. You could shapeshift and make copies of yourself, which is true to the source material. I was surprised that making clones can be unlocked as early as Chapter 2, which I'm not complaining since I feel this is Wukong's most signature ability in the franchise. This game was definitely a boss rush, in a good way though, as there's about 108 bosses in the game where sometimes within 2 minutes of killing one, you've already walked right into the area of the next. There's more bosses in one chapter of this game than the entire roster of bosses in Dark Souls 1 as an example. There's just so many. All the bosses were fun, but some are more memorable than others. Like, do you remember who Long Li Gaba is? That was the electric frog, by the way. The biggest annoyance I have with the game is likely its pacing. Where Chapter 1 ends at the top of a mountain, Chapter 2 opens with Wukong being riddled with arrows collapsed in the middle of a desert. How did he get there? Who shot him? Or how Chapter 3 is made up of 5 isolated areas compared to the linear map of 1 and 5. Or the open world aspect of Chapter 2. Some areas were just needlessly too big, while Wukong was just too small and slow. Even while running, it was a chore to sometimes walk to the other side of a temple. Of course, I also need to mention Chapter 6, where you unlock Flying Nimbus and can fly around the giant map at super speed. Sounds cool, right? The problem is there's nothing on this map. There are 5 bosses required, but no indication of where they are. Some are even only triggered and found after fighting another boss. So I got lost on this map for about 3 hours looking for them. It was basically needles in a haystack. There were additional bosses here too, but some required even just finding hidden items in other chapters, or knowing that it can't be seen unless you actually walk in the water, which when you've been flying around on an empty map on a cloud for a while seems contradictory. I'm going to play Black Myth Zhong Kui, of course, when it comes out. I just hope it doesn't suffer the same frame rate issues this game was riddled with. After watching the new Netflix anime, I decided to finally play Devil May Cry 1 and 2, since I've played the rest of the franchise. After 100%ing DMC 1, I likely won't be playing 2 anytime soon though. To start, I can definitely see how this originated as the dropped idea for Resident Evil 4, exploring a dark and spooky mansion with abrupt camera angles, not to mention how finding items felt very similar to the original 3 Resident Evils. Once they brought in demon powers and juggling combos though, they definitely had to go a different approach. Outside of it being Resident Evil inspired, there's not much good to say about it. I honestly wish I never started and agreed with those that told me that DMC3 is the start of the franchise, because comparing the two is like night and day. The game starts out nice, exploring a castle and slaying demons using varying combos. However, I soon learned that there's no major upgrades for your sword or combo game. That and the style system doesn't factor into your rank, so eventually just becomes a button masher out of convenience. That or just use your guns on everything, since they do a lot of damage in this game. Like the later games, it still uses the mission-based format for stages of the game, but some stages were way too short, some being as short as just get to the end of the hallway to finish it. The monsters you fight throughout the game are a good mix and fit well into what you'd expect to fight in the game's dark atmosphere. Demonic puppets, ghosts, giant bugs, and lizard men that were clearly going to be the hunters for the new Resident Evil. Bosses, however, are a big problem. Outside of the final boss, there are only 4 bosses, but each of them is reused 3 times in the game. Just slightly stronger, with 1 or 2 new moves to deal with each time. So if you don't like fighting Griffin while also fighting camera angles, get ready to fight him again on a tiny ship with changing camera angles and a giant projectile always flying at you non-stop. The final boss, Mundus, had 2 phases, but phase 1 is the only one that stands out. I say that because for this whole game I've been playing a hack and slash, only the final boss to become a shmup. It felt like it was straight out of a Kirby game where the final boss is often some kind of cosmic entity that you fight in space using another game genre. After phase 1 though, you're back on the ground fighting as normal Dante. I feel these 2 phases should have been swapped though. Fighting a giant statue as Demon Dante in space seems more climactic for a finale than walking around a pool of lava. Safe to say, after I finished 1, I likely won't be playing 2 in the near future, as I've been told it's even worse. That, and I likely need a break from the low-quality cinematics and the voice acting.
I should have been the one to fill your dark soul with light!
Elden Ring was likely the best game of the year to me, for 2 reasons. The first is it being exactly what I expected, an open-world Dark Souls game. As soon as I opened the first door and saw Limgrave, remember Limgrave? I knew I'd be playing this for a while. The game blew my mind even more once I went down below on my first elevator and realized there's a whole world underneath. Holy crap, it's huge down here. We're still going down! Holy crap! This game took a few months to complete, not because it was that hard, but due to my deletion challenge streams. I streamed the entire game, and if the donation goal was reached, I'd simply just delete the file and start from scratch, much to the dismay of some of my viewers. This challenge kept going until I beat the game at least once. However, with these deletions came the chance to try new weapons, optimize routes, rematch bosses, and even find undiscovered secrets to explore. I didn't get to experience online play because I was on PS5 and my PlayStation Plus subscription expired, but from what I saw in videos, it was just like past FromSoft games. There were the Spirit Ashes that basically acted like one-player summons, but I chose not to use those. I wanted to 1v1 every boss to show I could, and so I only used the Ashes on bosses I've beaten before in previous file attempts, just to move things along and get back to where I left off from the previous file. Really though, once you get Mimic, is there really a need for the other ones? It's just too good. The second reason why it was the best game of the year is just how much of a shot in the arm this game was for my channel. The shorts, the streams, and the massive influx of viewers who've now become channel regulars. You know who you are. Even those of you who are lurking in the shadows just to donate to delete my files. You know who you are. I enjoyed every minute of it simply due to you guys tuning in for the chats, discussing all things gaming, or reminding me what I said I was planning to do next on my to-do list, which was pretty often since there is always so much to do in this game. I may have been dying a lot, but many noted I always had a smile on my face. This was simply because I was just that happy that my channel was starting to show results now after switching from Twitch, with people reaching out asking me when the next stream will be or telling me to keep it up. So again, thanks to all those who donated, showed up to the streams, and continue showing up to the streams. There's definitely going to be more deletion challenges later on. The biggest hurdle this game faces is its own title. I feel most of the dislike stems from it being a numbered Final Fantasy game. People expect a specific genre and tactical depth, but Square Enix chose to go a different approach again this time. Honestly, if they were to try and make it its own standalone game with a unique title like Flames of the Phoenix or Brothers of Ash, it likely would have been better received and without being compared to the rest of the Final Fantasy franchise. The combat is where the game truly shined, which isn't a surprise given the combat director was the same guy who did Devil May Cry. Trying to optimize your combo damage was where most of the fun laid. Launching an enemy into the air, using your dog Torgal to extend the airtime while you set up a spell, and then slamming them back down for a massive Kamehameha finisher. However, the system felt pretty restrictive halfway in. By the end of the game, there are about 50 spells we can learn, yet we are restricted to only being able to equip 6 at a time. It lacked the complexity of Dante's 4 styles from Devil May Cry. By mid-game, certain skills like Deadly Embrace just felt mandatory for combo utility, limiting the number of slots we had to customize with. The biggest selling factor Final Fantasy XVI had was playing as Ifrit in the icon-on-icon kaiju battles. Literal weapons of mass destruction clashing in space or leveling mountains. They were fun to watch, but they often overstayed their welcome. These fights are frequently broken into smaller phases, each separated by cinematics and button mashing QuickTime events. Since you're almost never in danger of losing too much HP in these, they basically just act as hype moments rather than gameplay. One fight even just ends with you dealing like half the boss's HP by clicking square 3 times. The game's biggest flaw was its obsession trying to be Game of Thrones, bloating the story down with random political cinematics about the world and its kingdoms. While Clive's busy freeing slaves somewhere, the game cuts away to a war on the other side of the world that has zero impact on the current plot. This leads to a frustrating loop of forced exposition. After every major event, you are required to speak to Vivian for a 5-minute cinematic as she explains the world news using a map. This wasn't optional, by the way. You had to walk over and listen to her after almost every main quest. This kind of storytelling was really annoying, and there are a lot of characters that did this, especially when the game chose to ignore aspects of the story that may have been a bit more entertaining and interesting. We never got a background of Clive's 13 years as a slave, or how he rose to become a rebellion leader over 5 years. It all happened off-screen. The amount of cinematics in this game is staggering. We're just walking from point A to B in a village runs the risk of triggering a story-related 10-minute cutscene once you arrive. Just doing the main story results in about 590 cinematics, and there's an estimated 20 hours of cinematics in a single playthrough. With these numbers, the action often felt like it took a backseat to a political drama that wasn't interesting. Echoes of Wisdom was the first game of the year, mainly because I got it for Christmas. I felt this game was a bit rushed and that they wanted to make it as soon as possible because they wanted to keep the puppet-like aesthetic going from the Link's Awakening remake before it left people's memories. I honestly can't remember any positive things to say about this game. It felt like it was just a handheld game that was just ported to console. Outside of the usual one quest after a dungeon's completion, there really was no need to explore an area after beating it. The world itself was kind of limited given the rifts everywhere acting as roadblocks, but even after removing some rifts, there wasn't much to see. If anything, you'd probably get like 1 or 2 new NPCs to talk to get like one quest. Even the map I kind of disliked because there's an entire chunk of it that just goes unused the whole game. Not only that, but dungeons were very linear. There wasn't much to examine in each, and they just seemed like they wanted to push you to the exit as soon as possible. Usually with some low-effort barrier in the way to slow you down along the way. With how many echoes we obtained, and this being on the Switch, these dungeons could have been a lot more complex with their puzzles, forcing us to trial and error our ideas to find a solution that worked for us, with what echoes we had on hand. The echo to summoning idea was cool at first, and yes, you could unlock new echoes of stronger, cooler monsters as you kept going, but they were just too expensive. Even when you increased Try's power limit, it was just always better to spam an army of weaker guys, especially with the echo menu being so primitive. It was easier to just keep using your go-to ones, instead of having to scroll through the whole menu of echoes to find one item just to try it. I'm really surprised this menu was their final design too. Didn't anyone on the team question it during development? Having to scroll through a single row of 127 items just isn't a good user-friendly design. Sure, it had a most used and a type filter, but it really doesn't mean much when an NPC wants to see some obscure echo that I have and I need to scroll through my entire collection looking for it. Like, sure, the main selling point was, oh my god, you can finally play a Zelda, but I feel that's all Nintendo cared about. Especially when this was the latest big Zelda game and not a side project. Like, all around, I just feel for being the first major Zelda game where Zelda is actually the main character, she was put in just to sell the gimmick rather than the game. When I first saw the reveal trailer for Lies of P, I had the same thought as everyone else did. It's a Dark Souls with puppets. That hook alone was enough for me. I played the demo years later, still loved the vibe, and decided to wait until all planned DLC was released to dive in for a complete experience. Because I was doing a deletion challenge for this game too, meaning every donation goal meant starting over, I ended up seeing the majority of this game more than most. After the demo, I kept myself in the dark to avoid spoilers. However, my biggest surprise once I started playing, and likely my biggest problem with the game, was that we weren't just fighting puppets. It's called a zombie. We're dealing with more than just puppets now! Zombies played a significant portion of the enemy roster. There are actually more types of zombies in this game than puppets. And the further you go, the less puppets you fight in general. It even introduces infected puppets late in the game, which felt like a letdown. I just wanted a Dark Souls game with puppets. How many pieces of media do we need with zombies running around? This frustration extended to the bosses even. Any encounter with a puppet boss was instantly better than the human or zombie fights, especially the Puppet King. He was easily my favorite boss, with a specific DLC one being a close second. If you play the DLC, you probably know which boss I'm talking about. Visually, Lies of P is great, at least initially. I enjoyed unlocking and seeing more of the city of Krat. The further you venture from the city though, the more the level design slips into Souls-like tropes. You've got your mandatory church, the caves, an abandoned village, that actually felt like it was lifted directly out of Resident Evil 4. The further into the game you go, it just felt like it was losing a lot of its unique clockwork identity. Then there's Hotel Krat. At first, it's nice to see how the hub evolves with the residents, but it quickly becomes a chore. Because of my deletion challenge, I spent an eternity in this building. The layout is too big for its own good. A standard visit involves trekking around 2 floors to find different NPCs just to check off basic upgrades. To make things even worse, Sophia, the main level up NPC, wanders around, forcing you to play hide and seek just to level up. The one saving grace for this place was the jukebox. You can collect records to change the music of the hub, which is always a great touch. The only problem though, the very first song you unlock, Feel, is easily the best track in the whole game. It sets a bar that the rest of the soundtrack never quite clears again. However, the more I kept restarting, the more I enjoyed the weapon assembly system. It allowed me to make crazy combinations like slapping a massive circular saw blade onto a tiny dagger handle. This level of experimentation is something I haven't seen in any other Souls-like so far. It actually made the deletion challenge more fun, as I could try a new combination with each file, or prepare specific weapons for certain regions to try and blast through them faster than the last time. It's a great system that kept the gameplay fresh, even when the enemy variety started to feel stale. I waited quite a while before finally playing Psychonauts 2, and going in, I was immediately confused. The opening cinematic constantly references major events that supposedly happened between the first game and this one. events that are clearly crucial to the overall plot. Turns out Double Fine released a VR-only game, Rhombus of Ruin, that takes place directly after Psychonauts 1, and fully bridges the story to the sequel. That didn't sit right with me. Locking important story context behind VR hardware like the PlayStation VR or the Oculus Rift makes this feel less like Psychonauts 2 and more like Psychonauts 3. And no, I wasn't about to buy a VR headset just to catch up on some plot. Instead of just exploring a summer camp and entering the minds of fellow campers in Psychonauts 1, we now have access to explore an entire organization, its surrounding properties, and entering the minds of elite Psychonauts. We even get to explore the summer camp from the first game. That's how much bigger the game is. Gameplay-wise, Psychonauts 2 feels almost identical to the first, and not always in a good way, like the floaty platforming. Raz starts with nearly his entire moveset intact. Unlike a Metroid-style reset where powers are stripped away and re-earned, Raz simply stacks new skills on top of what he already has. Over the entire game, you only gain about 3 new powers, and most of them are situational. Like if a platform moves too fast, you use the time stop ability, or if there's a hookshot emblem, you use the hookshot ability. They're rarely useful outside of their intended moments. They can be used in fights, but with how long of a cooldown they're on, it's better to just stick with the usual skills. This also hurts the collectathon side of things. You'll be spending a lot of time exploring levels and collecting the same annoying floating 2D figments in every stage. Thankfully, levitation is still here, meaning you'll be clicking L2 constantly to hop back on the glowing psychic ball and move faster. My biggest issue is the levitation still takes up a skill slot. Given how essential and overused it is, this really should have been its own dedicated button. The cast remains as wacky and colorful as ever, but almost all the original characters are reduced to just cameos. Most of them are too busy to talk, off investigating something, or just flat out in a coma. There are plenty of new characters as well, even including another coma character. Unfortunately, the 6 interns we were introduced to at the start just aren't that important and could easily be removed. All of them exist purely for tutorials at the start, then fade into the background as walking exposition or just optional comedy you can listen to. Even both characters that are in a coma are more relevant to the story than them. And yet, despite doing almost nothing on screen, every intern somehow graduates with the same honors as Raz. Raz, the kid who stopped a mass murderer, repaired the minds of the founding psychics, and saved an entire government organization. What exactly did these interns do off screen to earn that? Shovel Knight Dig was my just one more run game of the year. Since the original Shovel Knight was such a success, I wanted to see what Yacht Club Games would do next with their mascot. This time around, they traded the 8-bit platforming and went for a 16-bit roguelike. The jump to a 16-bit aesthetic is the first thing that anyone will notice in this game. The animations are fluid, characters look more cartoony, and seeing Shovel Knight in 16-bit just felt like the next step for the character from the studio. I'm hoping we eventually see him in a 3D game too, not just as a cameo though. The structure is similar to other roguelikes. You're digging down, collecting loot, and praying for the right upgrades to survive the next floor. The only real difference is that you can't take too long exploring, else this giant drill of death will come down and try and one-shot you. It's addictive, but sometimes can feel a bit jarring at the start of a run because you'll be seeing the first biome, Mushroom Mines, and its boss, Spore Knight, a bit too often, as the rest of the run can be decided on as you go. As you descend or get sent back up to the village, you'll encounter plenty of familiar and new characters. While we get to see classics like Shield Knight and Chester again, the big highlight of course is the new boss knights. A new group of villains called the Hexcavators, led by the new big baddie Drill Knight. This is where I had a bit of a hang-up. The game brings back some members from the first game's boss group, the Order of No Quarter being Mole Knight and Tinker Knight. Don't get me wrong, they have entirely new movesets at least, but I really would have preferred an entirely new cast. With there only being 6 members of the boss group this time, a third of the time it's just reused characters. Reusing the old bosses felt a little safe, especially when my personal favorite, King Knight, didn't even make the cut. That being said, my favorite addition to the roster is easily Scrap Knight. She had the best design, carrying around her big massive bag of junk and fighting with it, plus just having little funny scenes of her being greedy. Not to mention her boss fight has a full-on second phase inside her bag of junk. Of all the bosses, she was the most fun to fight over and over again, just because of how the fight flowed. Plus the rare chance that she might just throw out a healing item, which is pretty helpful when you're 3/4 into a run. Outside of trying to discover the true ending, the replayability is there thanks to Black Knight showing up and offering you challenge runs to complete, with more unlocking and stacking up with each new completion. 100%ing the game requires clearing all these challenges, of course, so most of your time will be spent on this challenge mode. Just like how I played It Takes Two, I played Split Fiction all by myself, meaning one controller in each hand. If you're around for my It Takes Two streams or watched the recap vid I made, thinking that was tough, this was on another level, with way more instances of me thinking this can't be done alone. Story-wise, I'll be honest, it's no It Takes Two. It felt like the narrative was the second priority over the fun factor of the game, which isn't a bad thing. The exposition felt shoehorned in between levels, with the girls explaining how the level relates to their lives, serving more as a quick little symbolism moment that the game spoon feeds to the player. Mio and Zoe are fine, but they aren't nearly as memorable as Mei and Cody. I actually had to Google what Mio's name was again for this video because I already forgot it, though I think we can all agree both of them are still a massive step up from Rose. The game's overall plot was about stealing ideas from others, which is ironic, since the entire game is filled with references to gaming and pulp culture. One minute you're doing an Assassin's Creed leap of faith.
You've got to have faith when you leap.
The next you're watching a Sailor Moon transformation sequence.
Really? What?
Followed by lighting a Dark Souls bonfire.
Rest here, weary traveler, for great adventures lie ahead.
There's even references to Turtles in Time and an obvious one to Sonic.
Gotta go fast.
There are way more in this game, but I'm not going to list them all off. Some I didn't even notice and chat had to fill me in afterwards. The mechanics in Split Fiction are definitely more vast, as well as more demanding on the players this time around. There are sections that require simultaneous, precise timing that clearly didn't account for just one guy trying to play it by himself. Luckily, the game's settings had a way more extensive accessibility menu than It Takes Two, allowing for some heavy controller remapping. I basically had to engineer a layout that made certain platforming segments or co-op puzzles even possible for me, specifically allowing me to do everything needed with just using one hand on each controller. After these segments were done, I'd reset them to default until the next complex segment, because sometimes a lot of it is just follow the leader. For a quick summary though, I'd say for story, It Takes Two is better, but for sheer gameplay, Split Fiction wins. Oh my god, I did it! Whew! I of course had to play the latest Mario installment. Even though I knew it was going to be an easy game given it's a Mario game, I didn't expect it to be so short. It only took me 4 streams to 100% it. The plot of course featured Bowser being the big baddie as usual, requiring Mario and friends to venture off and stop him. This time unfortunately we only get to visit 6 different worlds. It was nice that we got to choose the order of the worlds, but I feel it should be law that 2D Mario games have to have at least 8 worlds. It's 2025, why are we getting smaller games on more powerful consoles? Even with just the 6 worlds, there wasn't even a boss at the end of each one too. When there was a boss though, it was always just Bowser Jr. for some reason. Why'd they keep reusing them when they have Pom Pom and Boom Boom? Or even just bring in the Koopa Kids again. Put one in each of the airships at the end of the worlds. That would be more enjoyable than just reusing the same shell spinning boss 4 times. I enjoyed that we could choose who to play as between stages. I made it a point to switch characters almost every stage just to add some variety and see what each of their transformations looks like. I of course didn't play as Nabbit or the Yoshis, given they take no damage and are essentially just easy mode. I was confused why though they needed to add 4 separate characters for this feature, since that's a lot. Couldn't they just have one Yoshi on the roster and allow the player to choose what color through a color palette? Why take up 3 slots for one character? Same could be said for the Toads too. It's not like they have unique properties or voices. The Wonder Flowers are obviously the big driving force for the game. They were way more interesting than the new forms introduced in this, which were Elephant, Drill, and Bubble. Every stage was unique enough, but then you combine it with the Wonder effect and you never know what's about to happen. Like the stage where you get turned into a Goomba and the game turns into a full-blown Metal Gear Solid stealth game. Unfortunately, some effects just made the levels even shorter than what it was originally, though it was required to replay almost every level if you wanted to find every Wonder Seed and 100% the game. Luckily, no 2 Wonder effects were the same, so that meant there were 50 unique effects across the game's stages. Some effects were more interesting than others, of course. Then there's the badges, which were a nice feature, but definitely made for younger gamers, as some of these just made the game too easy, especially the safety bounce badge. This just made you unkillable, as you could no longer die from pits as long as you touched the ground before falling in one again. I just kept the default parachute cap badge on, though I rarely used it. In the end, I'm glad I played it, but I'm worried about Mario games in the future. Like, this game could have been twice as long and had way more ideas and content. Imagine if we got to fight the Koopa Kids, each having a second phase where they power up using a Wonder Flower, then just completely having a new moveset. So my gaming backlog is officially dead, but the new 2026 queue is already starting to fill up with some heavy hitters I've bought in. I've already got Clair Obscur ready and installed on the PS5, and Hades 2 and Silksong are sitting on my Steam library waiting. So make sure you're subscribed to tune in for when I dive into those this year. Clearing these 10 games was a massive hurdle, especially with you guys paying to delete my Elden Ring and Lies of P files, but it made every win feel earned. If you're one of the viewers who stuck through those resets, drop a comment and let me know which run was your favorite, or which game brought you to the channel. Thanks for making 2025 my best year so far on YouTube, and I'll see you guys next time.